This harbor is easily one of my favorite things that I've ever built in my 1000-day hardcore Minecraft world. So my goal for this video is to take it to the next level with a massive expansion across the water. I'll be adding new ships, detailed buildings like a lumber mill for wood storage, and all kinds of little touches to make the whole area feel alive and immersive. Using our elytra, we can hopefully see this a little bit better. So our existing harbor is sort of this area over here, and I want to expand it over to this side as well. And I'm not gonna lie, it is a huge area, so I think we should just get right to it and do some terraforming. I started off by getting rid of some of the weird generation in the water, and then created a flat edge where we can eventually build some docks. And I would have continued, but all 3 of my netherite shovels were about to break, so I had to swing by our Enderman XP farm to repair them all. With that sorted, I got right back to it, terraforming for 3 more hours to get the entire landscape smoothed out and looking good. As for these harsh edges, don't worry, I want to surround them with some boulders as well as a retaining wall. Luckily, I ended up having most of the materials I needed in my storage room already. So after a few days of crafting, spending a bit of time at our moss farm, as well as mining tough blocks, I managed to get everything we'll need to build both the boulders as well as the retaining wall. I figured I'd start with the boulders, so I went ahead and built up the first one. Nothing too crazy, but I think it'll be a nice ending point for the wall once we build it. And with the build style locked in, I went ahead and built a few more of them. Moving right along, I finally got to work placing in the actual retaining wall. It's maybe on the verge of what some people would call block vomit, but I used a lot of different blocks such as tuff, packed mud, mossy cobblestone, and basalt to give the entire thing a worn down, grungy feel. And after over 7 hours of grinding away, we finally have the area prepped and ready to go. That was quite a bit of a grind, I can't lie, but it is so cool being able to leave our starter house now and see something across the water. That is so cool. But of course, it's just the start, and the next thing I want to get started on is adding some docks kind of going around the wall, so let's go gather some materials. And surprise, surprise, the first material on our list is spruce wood, so let's chop down a bunch of these trees. Ow. A bit of choppy time is always relaxing though, can't complain about this. And I'm also going to need a decent amount of stripped spruce logs, so we might as well just strip some of these as we go. Alrighty, it's been about 10 or 15 minutes, just got done chopping down a bunch of trees, and I'm making sure to replant a bunch of these so that we can chop down more trees here in the future if we want to. And I ended up getting about 7 stacks of regular logs and 3 stacks of stripped logs, so we should hopefully be good. And moving right along, I'm gonna need a bunch of oak logs as well, so once again, let's chop down a bunch of trees. I have no idea how many oak logs I'm really going to need, so I just went ahead and pretty much filled up my entire inventory. I figured it'd be better to have too much than not enough. I mean, we can always just use the extras for other projects. Anyway, back at our house, let's turn some of these spruce logs into planks, and then we can go ahead and turn those into slabs. We can make more as we go, but for now, this should be good. Okay, using those slabs, we can finally get started on the actual dock itself, and I think we just kind of build it right into the boulder that we made earlier. I think that will look pretty nice. Whoops, already misplaced one. And I'm just thinking that 5 blocks wide will look pretty good. I'm pretty sure that's what I did for the other kind of dock that we made, so I'd like them to look similar just so that everything looks cohesive. Already used up our first batch of slabs, but you can see I got a pretty decent section done, and I just left this area open as it's where I eventually want to build our lumber mill. But I have my crafting table on me, so let's place that down, turn a bunch of these into planks, and then make some more slabs. More slabs have been obtained, so let's get right back to it. Okay, if I counted correctly, these should be the last couple of rows right here. And as you can see, the wall does continue down this way, but I'm not really sure if I want to build docks kind of along this river edge, but let me know what you think. Anyway, now that we have the platform in place, I want to start planning out the pillars, and I'm just doing that with all the oak logs we got, and I'm trying to space them all 5 blocks apart. So we have a pillar here, so it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then another one, same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another one, and you get the idea, so I'm gonna extend this all the way around the dock. And this should be the last one right here beside the boulder. But now that we have these all planned out, we can break these slabs below the oak log, and then extend this all the way down to the bottom of the water. And that's also why I grabbed a bunch of these stripped spruce logs, just so that we can add a tiny bit of texture variation to the pillars, which is, pretty subtle, but it does go a long way. There are so many pillars, so let's not waste any time and get these all placed in. And this should be the last pillar right here. That is super awesome. That actually didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would, and I also have a ton of logs left over. And before I forget, let's add some ladders to the sides of some of these pillars just so that we can actually get up onto the dock platform. I think having one right here will be pretty convenient, sort of where this corner of the dock is. Let's maybe do another one right here. I think another one right here will be good. Maybe another one on this pillar, why not? And let's do one final one over here, sort of near the boulder. So much better now having some proper ways to get up and down. I mean, we could use our elytra, but it's a little bit unrealistic. And on this topic of going up and down, I also want to add a few staircases to get up onto the wall. So maybe we do something like that, just get rid of probably this slab and this slab, and perfect, nice little staircase. And I'm thinking we do a second one right here, so let's do a few of the tough bricks, a couple of stairs, and then we can break probably this slab and this slab, and I don't love how that's like an exposed log like that, so maybe we just swap it out with the tough brick, and yeah, I think that's pretty good. I'll eventually add more details to the dock to make it feel more lived in, but for now, I want to get started on fixing up this giant gap in the dock by building up a lumber mill. Currently, I'm storing pretty much all of our items inside of our starter house, which has been a pretty fun challenge, but there is one main issue, which is our wood storage. Like seriously, just look at this chest, how am I supposed to fit anything in here? And these other ones aren't much better. This one right here is for spruce and dark oak, and this top chest is for oak and birch, which is also pretty packed. So let's get started on getting all the materials. I know I'm gonna need a couple of stacks of andesite, which perfect, I have some in storage already. And I'm also going to need just a few slabs, so we can grab those right now too. Moving right along, I'm gonna need a few amethyst clusters, and sweet, I have a ton. Sometimes having a bit of a hoarding issue really pays off. Okay, I'm also going to need a few acacia logs as well as an acacia button, so we can just grab one plank, turn that into a button, and we're good to go. Also, if you're wondering how I know how many materials I need, I use this mod called Lightmatica as I pre-plan most of my builds, and basically you can create like a blueprint and then it tells you all the items that you need. And as you can see from this one, there is quite a few, so let's get back to work. Okay, I'm gonna need 5 anvils, but thanks to our iron farm, I should have a bunch of iron in here, so let's go over to our crafting table, turn some of this into iron ingots, and then we can make, not 9, but we can make 5 anvils. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna need some blue candles, so let me grab some string, and then I should have some beeswax, I hope. Okay, I only have 5 left. Definitely need to set up a bee farm soon, because that's pretty bad. Anyway, we're gonna need some blue dye, so let me grab some of this lapis, head over to our crafting table, and turn that into blue dye. Then we can make our candles, and then turn those into blue candles. We're gonna need 73 chests, which is kinda disgusting, but luckily we still have a ton of logs. So let's turn all of these into planks if it doesn't totally fill up my inventory, and then we can turn all of those into chests. A little tricky with how full our inventory is, but let's turn all of those into planks as well, and then we should be able to turn all of those into chests. Gonna need a couple of chiseled bookshelves as well. We're gonna need a couple of, what are they called? Yeah, chiseled stone bricks, which I have some in here already, which is great. And my inventory is pretty much already full, so let's grab a shulker box from our ender chest, place it right here, and then we can unload some of these items. And now that we have more space again, we can carry on gathering up more materials. Alrighty, it's been about 45 minutes, and I think 6 shulker boxes later, but we now have most of the items that we're going to need. There still is a few items though, and oh, hey wandering trader, do you have anything cool? No, not really, so goodbye. Goodbye to you too. Goodbye. You gotta do a better job at guarding the door, alright, Asteroid Destroyer? No solicitors. No solicitors. As I was trying to say before we got rudely interrupted by that wandering trader, is that there is still just a few more materials that we need that I didn't have in my storage room. First of which is some wool, and I'm gonna need some brown wool, which is perfect. These guys are already dyed brown. I'm also going to need some gray wool as well, so I brought some dye with me. Just dye, yeah, okay, we can dye the sheep too, and then we can shear these guys. And then using that wool, I want to make some carpet, so we'll do the same thing for this brown wool as well. Okay, that's another item crossed off the list, and the next thing we need is some moss, and I should hopefully still have a bunch in here because we ran the farm earlier this episode, so let's take a look. I'm really hoping we have enough. Oh, come on. Please tell me. Okay, we have some here, and okay, yeah, we have a bunch here. Awesome. I also need a bunch of waxed copper, and this is where I've been getting most of my wax from, but it looks like all the bees have either like died or disappeared. I think they're maybe getting stuck in this cave entrance, which really sucks. Let's check inside of our starter house though, because I might have a few beehives in here. I think I do. Let's check our beehive chest. This one has, okay, this one has 1 bee in it. This one has 1 bee as well. And I'm pretty sure both of these are, yeah, these are empty. What about this one that I have in the item frame? This one actually has wax in it already. This one has, okay, it has 0 bees, but you know what? At least it has some wax in it. We should build like a proper wax farm, but I'm low-key kind of lazy, so I think we just set up another small one inside of the greenhouse. At least they won't be able to escape. This table right here is just kind of decoration. I think we can get rid of this. And then if we dig down, what is this? 2 blocks, I think? And then do campfire, campfire, campfire. And then we can place our bee nests right on top. And I guess we can wax these ones. They have wax in them, you know, why not? And I'm pretty sure there are bees in there, but it's kind of late right now. Probably need to sleep and then they'll come out in the morning. And great, there is some bees in here. Let's maybe just grab one of these torch flowers and come over here, bee, please. And there you go. Look how cute this little baby bee is. That is awesome. Let's also just check out this flower forest over here. Maybe there's a few more beehives where we can pick up a bit more wax. Already I've spotted some, so let's just place down a campfire and go ahead and wax that. And there's another one right here, so we'll place down another campfire and a bit more wax. Let's just take a little walk around, see if there's any more. That'd be very convenient. Okay, I spotted a couple more beehives. That is great. Any wax in this one? There is. Where did it go? Okay, give me that. I definitely need that. And there's also one right here. Just dig under that, place down a campfire, and boop, give me some wax. This was a great idea. There is so many beehives over here. This is perfect. Got another one right here. I'll take that. Thank you very much. Just grabbing a bunch of flowers so that we can breed the bees and then bring them back with us. All right, bees, get over here. Take that, take some flowers. Okay, yeah, let's breed these bees and then hopefully, well, the sun is kind of setting right now. Hopefully they should all go into the nest. And then once they do, we'll place a campfire underneath, break it, and then we can bring the nests back with us. I don't like being out in the dark like this, but let's break all of these nests and bring the bees back with us. Alrighty, I got a bunch of nests. Let's get out of here. And I guess we can take a nap in one of the villager houses. I'm sure they won't mind. Alrighty, back at the greenhouse once again. Let's see if we can add more beehives in here. We can probably dig out like 3 spots right here. So we'll just dig down 2 blocks. And then we'll go campfire, 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 and place down the bee nests. Okay, we got a ton of bees in here now. This is awesome. Let's also do the same thing on this side. Just like that, we have 9 beehives, which is honestly pretty solid. And a few of them already have wax in them, so let's go ahead and grab that all. Some over here too, very nice. Why is this guy spinning like that? Do you see that? What is going on with this guy? Still a bit of a temporary solution, I'm not gonna lie. We should definitely set up a proper bee farm, but you know what? We got 60 wax, which should be more than enough for now anyways. Okay, now that we finally have this stuff, let's de-age some of this copper that I got a while back in a trial chamber. And then we can re-wax that using the wax that we just collected. Go ahead and mine that all up real quick. And then using our stone cutter, we can turn all of those into grates. And we still have some wax left over, so let's wax some of these trapdoors. And I wish that was the last material, but I also need a ton of dark oak wood. Ow. So let's get ow again. So let's gather some of this up. And just like with the spruce trees earlier, I'm gonna strip a bunch of these as I go to save us time later. A bunch of dark oak has been obtained, so I made my way back home, and let's just turn a bunch of this into planks and we can make some slabs, and we're also going to need a bunch of stairs. So close to having everything we need, just a couple more items, both of which are gonna come from the nether. The first block is basalt, and I'm pretty sure you can easily make a farm for this stuff, but you know, I really can't be bothered, so we'll just quickly gather some up. It's probably a little sketchy digging this stuff up, but I do have fire res on me, so we should be good. Okay, I think that is our sign to not dig any further. That's a little scary. I did get a couple of stacks though, what should be plenty. The second block I need is crimson stems, which should be right here. I really don't need a whole lot. I'll probably just grab like a couple of stacks and then head on home. We can add those final 2 materials to our shulker mess, but with that, we finally have all the materials we need to build the lumber mill. I jumped right in by building the foundation with a mix of mossy and regular cobblestone, stone bricks, and andesite. For the second floor, I went with a Tudor style using dark oak and sandstone for a nice contrast. The roof was kept pretty simple with deep slate and dark oak. To power the lumber mill, I added a water wheel on the side, which was pretty tricky to design, but definitely worth it in the end. This thing came out so cool, I am really happy with this. And one of my favorite things about it is that you can easily enter it from the dock, which to me is just such a cool vibe. And heading on inside, you can see I already went ahead and got kind of like the main floor in place and also some of these kind of upper platforms. But first, I'll just quickly show you that if we leave this door right here, it also takes us right onto the dock, and I just wanted to quickly add a lantern right here before I forget. Heading back inside though, we have a bit of a staircase right here, which takes us, higher up of course, and this door right here takes us to like on top of the wall, which is really cool. Heading back inside once more, we have yet another staircase, and if we follow this walkway, it takes us over to this kind of like lookout area. While having an awesome view, it also kind of makes sense from a functional standpoint, just because a worker could, come up here and work on the wheel if something broke or it just needed maintenance. I'm really excited to get started on the interior, but before we get too carried away, I did want to add a few more details to the outside, and considering it is a lumber mill, I thought we could add a small little pile of wood at the side of the building. And right beside that, I was thinking we could make a small cart of sorts, so maybe for the wheels we just do some oak trapdoors. Probably skip like 1-2 blocks, do a couple more just like so. And then in between those, we'll do a couple of slabs. And then in between the slabs, I'm just thinking some trapdoors. And then right here, we can do a couple of gates. And then on top of that, I'm thinking a couple of stairs, just so it kind of looks like they have somewhere to sit. And I feel like hay is always one of those, just kind of classic things to be carrying around. So we'll just do that with some, hay bales, of course, as well as some bamboo slabs, just to give it a bit more detail. And then to make it look a little bit more, kind of secured or like strapped down, I'm just thinking some ladders on the sides, and then at the back we can do a couple of trapdoors. Pretty simple design, but I really like that, and I think it'll look a lot more in place once we eventually build some, kind of proper roads. I just added this larger pile of logs, which I think fits, the lumber mill theme pretty nicely, but to make it look a little bit more secured, I'm just thinking we use some rails as well as ladders. So we'll do the exact same thing right here, a ladder and just some rails connecting over to the other side, and yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. Really going for like an industrial vibe, so I'm thinking we maybe build some large kind of barrels, so maybe just like a 2x2 thing and then do some trapdoors on top. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, but we can probably make it look even a bit more detailed by surrounding it with ladders to once again look like some sort of strap. I built another one of those large barrels and also added a few smaller ones kind of scattered around, and I'm really liking how this is looking. I'll probably add more details outside later, but for now I want to get started on the interior as I think this is going to be a really cool one. And since we have these kind of 2 different levels, I think we definitely need a railing. This is probably breaking like a million safety violations right now, so let's get this in place. Yeah, that's looking way better, and I also added a railing to this upper walkway as well, so everything should be up to code. And I was thinking this kind of upper platform could be a rest area for the workers, so let's start off by adding a bit of a shelf, and we can just decorate it with an amethyst cluster and a flower pot. And they're definitely gonna need somewhere to rest their feet, so let's make a small table. We can put a pressure plate on top, and then right here I'm thinking we just do a bit of a painting. I'm liking that, and in this corner let's just hide a bit of lighting using an indoor plant. And I left a bit of a hole kind of underneath this staircase, so let's just fill this in with some bookshelves as well as chiseled bookshelves, and I did bring a few books along with me just so we can fill these in. I don't really want anything too fancy, since it is a lumber mill, but I think this is a pretty cozy rest area for the workers. Just ignore my shulker mess for right now, we'll get rid of that soon, but we do have some space kind of on this upper walkway, so I was thinking we make another small little seating area. Don't really have a whole lot of room up here, so I think that'll do. We do, however, have a decent amount of space in this corner beside the entrance, so I was thinking we make a bit of a shelf. That's a pretty good start. Let's just maybe do a couple more trapdoors like that, and then we can probably go boom, boom. And then in this spot right here, let's do a bit of a flower pot, and right here we can do a lantern. This wall beside the shelf is looking pretty bare, so maybe let's do a bit of a painting. I don't love that one. Okay, don't give it to me twice, please. Yeah, I like that one. I think it fits the lumber mill vibe. And it probably doesn't really make too much sense for this setting, but I think a couple of pots over here will look pretty nice. I think I'm happy with this upper section now, so I want to start adding some details to this lower area as well. And I think we can't go wrong with adding even more piles of logs, so let's maybe add 5 there, another 5 here, and maybe 4 on top, and you know what, let's do 4 more right there. And then using the same building technique as earlier, let's do a couple of ladders and then just do some rails going all the way over to the wall. Okay, I'm liking that. We definitely need some more kind of proper lighting, so let's maybe just do a chain and a lantern right there. And I guess that means we can finally get rid of this temporary lantern, and just for like kind of some fire safety, I guess, let's add a bit of water. I don't really know how much sense it makes, but I guess they could either dump this on something, or if a piece of wood caught on fire, they could throw it in here. Moving right along, this corner could use some love, so let's maybe add a few barrels, which we can detail with stripped spruce wood and maybe a couple of slabs, and then let's just add a lantern right on top. Carrying on with that same idea, let's maybe add a few more barrels in this corner with, I don't know, maybe a campfire on top and a lantern, and let's just extinguish that with our shovel. And we definitely need a crafting table in this area, so let's maybe do one right there, and then we can probably add a few more logs, and then maybe just, I don't know, more campfires, can't go wrong with that. Once again, got to extinguish all of those. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, and I think we do have some space for a shelf, so let's just build one using slabs and trapdoors. And then so we can actually reach what's on top, let's just do a simple ladder going right up the wall. And then let's just keep it super simple up here. We can probably add a barrel, maybe another one right there, and a chest. Definitely easier to see this from the upper platform, but I think this looks pretty good. Now it's time for the fun part. Let's try to build some sort of machine that would actually be cutting the wood. So my idea is that the water wheel would be spinning outside, and that would cause this thing to turn, which will eventually power the saw that we're about to make. And to look like some sort of heavy duty like platform of sorts, let's use some anvils. Beside that, let's do a row of spruce slabs. And then right in front of that, let's do a spruce trapdoor as well as a dark oak trapdoor. That's looking pretty good. Let's just build this up a little bit higher using some slabs, and then we can use a stone cutter to look like the actual saw blade. And then to make it look all connected, let's use some lightning rods. We'll do one right there, and then hop over to the other side and do one right there. Definitely not the most realistic design ever, but you can imagine that they're taking these larger logs, sliding them across the platform, they're getting cut up by the saw, and they're just throwing all the kind of, smaller pieces in this pile over here. And then once it's all cut up, they could take it right out this door, throw it onto a boat, and then the boat could deliver it off to whoever ordered it. I'm not really trying to create any super detailed lore for this world, but it is kind of fun just to have those small little storytelling elements that make the world feel alive. We still have a ton of space upstairs, so I want to turn this into a place for wood storage. And let's begin with some of these smaller details, like a railing going around the stairs. That should hopefully keep us from falling down on accident, and right beside that I was thinking we could make a small table, and on top of it let's just put a pressure plate and maybe a flower pot. And then above that, let's make a shelf using trapdoors. And I think it'll look nice if we display an amethyst cluster as well as a campfire. And in this last spot, maybe just a few candles, just like so, and we can light those with our flint and steel. I currently just have a bunch of lanterns all over the floor, but let's get rid of these and build some more permanent lighting. Just got to get ourselves a little bit higher, and then let me just line up with this pillar, I think. So we'll do a grindstone right there. And then right below that, let's do a fence. We'll do a chain below that, and then a lantern. Yeah, I'm liking that. So maybe let's do another one right here. So once again, a fence, chain, and a lantern. Got 3 of those designs built up, and that should hopefully be enough to light up this entire room. Carrying right along, let's build some carpets, as I think it'll go a really long way in helping break up all of this spruce. And a simple checkered pattern of gray and red carpet should look pretty nice. And it's not a perfect solution, but let's try to cover up some of this andesite just using some brown carpet. Right here, let's just make a small table kind of using one of the similar designs we did downstairs, and on top let's just do a flower pot with an azure bluet in it. And for just a bit more detail, I added a painting. And I don't know why, but I think a couple of decorated pots will look nice here, so boom, decorated pots. Definitely need some greenery in here, so let's make another indoor plant using a composter and flowering azalea leaves, and then beside that, let's just place down a stone cutter. And we probably have space for another table, so let's just make that out of jungle wood. And right on top, let's do a flower pot with a dark oak sapling, and then beside that, let's do a pressure plate and a lantern. And you know what, a painting always looks good, so let's just add one right above the table. We're going to need somewhere to store all of the wood, so let's get started by adding in a bunch of chests. And then to keep it super organized, let's use the logs for each different wood type to indicate what chests will have which wood type in them. And I don't know if it's just me, but it is super satisfying seeing all of the different wood types in a row like this. I also have a small section on the opposite wall, which will be for the nether, I guess it's not wood, like the nether, stems or whatever you want to call them, as well as the bamboo. And I figure if they ever add more wood types, I can just get rid of this table as well as this shelf and make this wider to accommodate them. But with that, I think there's only one more thing to do, and that's bring all of our wood over from our starter house and organize it inside of this room. And I guess I should get rid of all of these shulker boxes, they're a bit of an eyesore. And I can't even begin to describe how excited I am to finally be clearing out these chests. These are an absolute disaster. Alrighty, I did leave a few logs in here just for crafting purposes, but as you can see, the rest of these are all cleared out. And I just put all of them inside of these shulker boxes, so let's tear these down and bring them over to the lumber mill. Alrighty, so I got everything organized and put away, and basically the way that I did this is that each kind of column of chests is for each of these different wood types, and then I did the top chest for the logs, and then the one below that is for like all of the different items that you can craft using that wood type. And then the very bottom chest is just kind of like for overflow, so if either of these chests fill up, we still have space to store the items. And I did that exact same thing for all of the different wood types. So you can see here we have acacia, this next one is for, mangrove, and cherry, and so on. And I also did the exact same thing over here for the nether wood types, as well as for bamboo. But with that, I think we can finally call this lumber mill finished. I am really happy with how this thing turned out. The exterior plus the interior just turned out super awesome. As cool as this lumber mill is, it is looking just a little bit lonely, so I want to get started on building some houses kind of in this region right here. And I already went ahead and grabbed all the materials we're going to need for the first house, which are just in these shulker boxes, so I think let's just get straight to it and get to building. I ended up having to do a little bit of terraforming to make room for it, but once that was taken care of, I got straight to it. The house itself is pretty small, but I really do like the kind of whitewashed look that I went for, which I just accomplished using pale oak and white wool. And then for the roof, I used black stone, which contrasted the white really nicely. First house is in and looking good. I am really happy with how this one turned out. And there was just a couple more details that I wanted to add. First, just a lantern to kind of this covered area on the side of the house. And then to detail the front of the house a little bit more, I was thinking we could add some signs going all the way across. And it's a pretty subtle effect, but it kind of just creates like, a bit of a border between the first floor and the second floor, which I really like. And already just having one house in here is making this space feel way more immersive, which has me really motivated to keep building more houses, so let's go gather up more materials. And we are going to need a decent amount of bamboo blocks, so let me just plant a bunch of this, it'll grow, and we can chop it all down later. And this is totally just another one of those cases where I should just build a farm for this stuff, but you know what, that's a future problem. Something else we're going to need is a decent amount of both cyan and yellow wool, so let's make use of our auto wool farm. I think most of the sheep right now are dyed either white or gray, so let's just try to re-dye some of these guys if we can. They keep getting automatically sheared before I get a chance to dye them, so I'm gonna have to take out all these shears, dye them, and then put the shears back. I had to wait like 5 minutes, but it looks like some of these sheep have their wool, so let's dye a few cyan. And then we already do have one yellow sheep, so maybe we just dye this guy yellow as well. So we have 2 yellow, 4 cyan. You know what? That should be good. Just gotta put all of our shears back. Alrighty, the farm is all patched up, so it's just a matter of waiting now to get all the wool that we need. In the meantime, let's gather up more resources, which means another trip into the Nether. And the first block we need is bone blocks, but luckily there's a soul sand valley super close by, so we should be able to get a bunch super easily. Got some more right here. Also, I have soul speed on my boots. I don't know if it's a great idea in hardcore though, as I am flying. That was honestly pretty easy. I already have almost, 3 stacks of bone blocks, which should be enough, so let's move on to the next material. And that material is blackstone, so let's very carefully try to mine some of this up. Even though I have a fire resistance potion, oh my goodness, in my hotbar, this is still really scary. I don't know if y'all can see this, but there is lava like dropping from the ceiling right above me. This is kinda sketchy. I just got done mining out this entire chunk, and we have, how much is that, like 10 or 11 stacks of blackstone, which should be more than enough. And the last block that I need from the Nether is some of this, I think it's called warped, what is this stuff? Warped wart block. Whoa, that is really hard to say. Anyways, I need a bit of this stuff. This is so slow. Is it faster with my axe? No, not really. Okay, with the hoe is way faster. Let me gather some of this up. Alrighty, just like that, I have about 3 stacks, so let's get out of here. Back in the overworld, let's continue the grind by harvesting our wheat farm so that we can craft more packed mud. And I am replanting everything, you know, I am a good farmer like that. Wheat has been obtained, but unfortunately I'm almost completely out of regular mud, so I'm over at a mangrove swamp to gather some up. At least this stuff is super easy to gather up since you can insta-mine it, so just like that, I have pretty much an entire inventory full. Before heading home though, there is one more pit stop we need to make, which is at a coral reef, so we can get some, you guessed it, coral blocks. And I'm not exactly sure how much I need, so I'm just gonna try to grab like a few stacks of each kind, and that should be good. And I'm not really too sure if there's like a better method for gathering this stuff up. I don't really think there is, so oh well, we'll just go with this method. Alrighty, it's been about 15 minutes and I got a bunch of different coral blocks, and as a bonus I also have a bunch of sea pickles as well as the different coral fans, so let's head home. And now that we're here, let's finally use the wheat as well as the mud that we got to craft some packed mud. And we can also turn some of it into mud bricks as well. It also looks like our bamboo has had a chance to grow, so let's harvest this all. Wow, this is super satisfying. I love this. And it hasn't been super long, but I am curious to see how much wool that we've gotten. Let's see. Okay, 23 cyan and 17 yellow. Honestly, not too bad, but I am gonna need just a little bit more. While I waited for the farm to produce the rest of the wool that we needed, I did another long crafting session inside of the house as well as our brand new lumber mill to get together the rest of the materials that we needed. That took way longer than I thought it would. Like seriously, I think that was over like 3 hours of crafting, but as you can see, I've placed down all of these chests and they all have the materials that I need to build a house. So that right there is all the materials for one house. If we take a look at this next chest, this is all the materials for another house. But as you can see, there are quite a few chests as I want to build tons of houses. But before we get to building, let's just tear down all of this bamboo. It's a bit of an eyesore and we shouldn't need it anymore. Wow, that was a lot of bamboo, but good thing we have a ton of space in our lumber mill. And I'm also super curious to see how much wool is in here now. It's got to be a ton, right? Okay, yeah, wow, we have over a stack of yellow wool as well as over a stack of cyan, so that is more than enough. Finally, we have all the materials we need, so let's not waste any time and get straight to building. This first one is a pretty simple design, just with a mud brick foundation, birch walls, and a black stone roof. The key point of interest is definitely the tower on the side, and as I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure this is the first house that I've built that has a tower in this world. I'm really happy with how this one came out. I even added a couple of kind of windows in the roof, which I think looks pretty cool. I do, however, want to add just a few more details, and first things first, I think we can build a small cart here, so let's just start with the wheels, which we can make using trapdoors. And then in between the wheels, we'll do slab, slab, and then right here we can do trapdoor, trapdoor, trapdoor. Then for some kind of like handles that somebody could pull, we'll do a gate, and then on top we'll do a campfire and just extinguish that. Pretty simple design, but this is definitely my go-to design at the moment for any time I need a small cart. And you know what, we still have a decent amount of open space in this area, so I'm thinking we build a well right in front of the house. So let's start off by making the foundation using stone bricks and mossy stone bricks, maybe just like that, and then we'll do cobblestone for the rest. And then we can put a slab in the middle, and then we'll do some walls on all 4 corners. And then on top of all of the walls, let's do 2 spruce fences, just like so. And then right on top of that, we'll do some dark oak stairs. Let's see if we can jump to the other side without falling. Sweet, parkour master. We'll do the exact same thing facing inwards. And then we'll do a row of slabs, just like so, and another row right on top. That's looking pretty good. Let's just add a lantern to light up the area a little bit, and then we can simply fill this all in with some water. And there we go, a nice little well for the residents in the harbor. But with those couple of extra decorations in place, let's carry on building more houses. And I maybe got just a little bit carried away as I built 4 more of them in one go. And even though all of the houses are kind of in a similar style, I tried to switch up the block palettes as well as the shapes to make them all unique and interesting. Already this area is shaping up so much. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. And I think my favorite one is this blue house. It's just so vibrant and just makes the whole area feel really alive. But I still want to add a few more details to all of the houses, and first things first, let's just add a bunch of lanterns since, you know, I really don't want a bunch of mobs spawning in the area. That's much better, and in front of this house, I want to create a small planter box, just using some podzol, and then we can surround that with spruce trapdoors, and on top, let's plant some bushes. This white house is probably my second favorite one. I really like this whitewashed look with the bone blocks as well as the mushroom stems and pale oak. However, I'll be honest, this wall right here is looking pretty bare right now, so maybe let's just make a cover using some campfires. Just gotta extinguish these all real quick, perfect. The cover is in place and looking good, but I think we can make it a little bit more detailed using some hanging roots as well as glowberries. And to help light up the area a bit, we can actually grow some of those, and then let's just shear these all so that it, whoops, wait, how do I do this? Okay, I have to shear it first and then bone meal. Perfect, that's what I want, and let's shear that one too. And for underneath of this cover, I'm thinking we just do some beehives, maybe just like that, and maybe we can do a barrel as well, and one more beehive. Already this area is really shaping up, but you know what, we still have 2 more houses to build, so let's get right to it. Oh, that's a wall. For the first one, I went with a yellow theme, which I think turned out pretty fun, and I just accomplished that with bamboo as well as the yellow wool that we gathered earlier. And then for the final house, I used a bunch of the coral blocks that we got in the ocean for the foundation, and I think they have like a bit of a softer tone to them, so I tied into that by using granite, jungle wood, and copper for the roof. Super happy with how these last 2 houses came out, and for just one final detail, let's add a lantern, and then this space is looking a little bit empty, so maybe we just do some kelp blocks. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. And as much as I love this new street in the harbor, I'm getting kind of tired of looking at this grass, so let's go collect all the materials we need to build a proper road. And I'm really hoping that I'll have at least a few of the materials already in our starter house. That would be very convenient. Okay, it looks like I have a bunch of rooted dirt already, which is very nice. And I'll also take these mud bricks as well as all of this packed mud. And for sure, I'm gonna need a ton of coarse dirt, so let's take all of that too. That's honestly a pretty good start, and let's just throw all of this into a shulker box. Alright, another block I need is granite. Oh geez, okay, I have like half a stack. That is not gonna be enough. Anyway, let's continue inventorying what we already have. I want to use some brown mushroom blocks, and I have about a stack. We'll probably have to make more of those as well. And I'm probably going to need even more packed mud than what I had in that chest. So let me grab some hay bales as well as some mud, and then we can turn this into wheat and then craft a bit more packed mud. I also want to use some tuff, but yeah, okay, I have a bunch in here. At least that's one material we don't have to worry about. And I'm also going to need just a little bit of mossy cobblestone, and yeah, I have some there too. Perfect. And I also want to use some stone buttons as decoration, and it looks like I made a bunch on accident one time, but you know what? I'll take it. I also want to use some pale moss, and yeah, I have a ton in here, so let's just grab a stack. And to decorate the road itself, let's also grab some of this short grass as well as bushes, and I'll even take some of the dry grass as well, why not? And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna need more coarse dirt, so let's just grab a bunch of this regular dirt, and then let's grab some of this gravel as well. And then of course we can just use those to craft some coarse dirt. How many times do I have to tell Asteroid Destroyer that I don't want any solicitors? Get out of here, guy. But you know what, that just got me thinking I haven't checked in on my real life cats yet this video, so let's go do that right now. We're making some great progress on our harbor, but let's just take a second here to check in on our cats. We have Munchie up here, just, chilling. She likes to vibe up here sometimes. And then my other cat, Mittens, is just straight chilling over here. Look at her, she's straight vibing. This is nice. But as always, this is your reminder to like the video. It really helps out the channel, so I greatly appreciate it. Alrighty, that was a fun distraction, but let's not get too carried away as we need some more materials for our pathway. Just turning on our beacon there, and let's go grab some granite. And it looks like there's a bunch out right here, so let's gather this up. Super quick with haste too, so I can't really complain. That took no longer than like 2 minutes, and I already have a ton of granite, which is awesome, so let's head back up to the surface. And the other block we need is brown mushroom blocks, so let's just use some bone meal to grow some of these large mushrooms, and we can easily gather up a bunch of these blocks. With that, we should have all of the materials that we need, which is great, but there's just one more thing to do, and that's remove the existing ground so we can place in the actual road. It took longer than I thought it would to clear out the space, but once it was all dug out, I got straight to work placing in the road. Building roads and pathways are one of those things that's kind of subtle but also makes the biggest change. Like just looking at this now, it's so much more immersive and put together. And I also tried to add some of the different kind of, grass types around, as well as some buttons which kind of look like stones, just to make the entire area a little bit more detailed. We still do have some kind of open areas, like right here for example, so maybe let's just throw down a few more barrels, can maybe do a trapdoor on top, I don't know, maybe another one here and here, something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good, and considering it is a harbor, there'd be lots of just, random junk thrown all over the place, so I think it fits the setting. And you know what, while we're in detailing mode, let's also add some decorations to the dock, and one of my go-tos is using grates to look like crab cages. And for any dark areas, I'm also going to try to dot just a bit of glow lichen around to make the area a bit safer. Another detail I like to add to docks is kelp blocks, so maybe let's just add a few right here. Can't forget to add more glow lichen, I really don't want a bunch of mobs in the area. Let's maybe do a few more of our crab cages right here. And another good detail is hay bales, so maybe let's just do some like that, and we can detail it a little bit using some bamboo slabs. Already that's looking pretty good, but you know what, let's add even more crab cages, can't go wrong with that. And at the end of the dock, let's maybe create a little bit of a seating area using birch stairs, scaffolding, and we can decorate it with a torch flower. And we can even get crazy with it and detail under the dock itself by creating some patches of algae using moss blocks and oak leaves. And the nice thing about moss is that you can plant stuff on top of it, so let's use some bushes as well as short grass to really enhance the effect. This new region is really shaping up, and the view from our island is especially awesome. But we're not done yet, as the next thing I want to make is a crane right in this area, so you know what, let's get right to building. I figured this area would make sense for a crane, as they could be lifting logs either onto or off of boats. I'm definitely no expert when it comes to building cranes, but I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. I added like a wheel at the back as well as a counterweight, so the idea is that they could turn this to, lower and raise the kind of like winch over here, which right now is just holding some logs, which I think is pretty fitting for the lumber mill. And the view from the dock is especially awesome. I love how it's just like overhanging to the water, super cool. We already do have one boat at our original harbor, which looks pretty sweet, but with how big this expansion is, I think we definitely need another one, so let's go ahead and build one out over in this area. I don't know why, but boats continue to be one of like the most difficult things for me to design, and truthfully, I think this one looks a little bit derpy, but the overall shape and color scheme is pretty cool I think, so let's roll with it. Just one final detail that I want to add, and that's of course more crab cages. I feel like I'm a pirate or something though, this is pretty cool. Maybe it's not the best boat that has ever been built, but the only way to get better at building something is to try, so I think I'm happy with it. You know what, we have made so much progress this episode, which is absolutely awesome, and I'm really curious to see what it'll look like on the map inside of our starter house. So let's maybe just start with like, I don't know, this map right here, and okay, I'm gonna have to walk a little bit closer to get it fully updated, but already this is looking pretty cool. Alrighty, I've got all the maps updated, so let's throw them back on the wall just like so, and geez, this is looking so cool. Our new harbor area is looking super sweet, but as you can see, we still have so much space that needs to be filled out with builds, so let me know what you think we should make. But as always, if you want to explore this world for yourself, you can get the world download on my Patreon or by becoming a member on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching, happy building, and I'll see you all in the next one.